The dust cloud rising behind the stagecoach carried more than just Texas dirt. It carried the last shreds of Eleanor Hartwell's old life, and she watched it disappear through tear-blurred eyes as the coach that had brought her family's final letter rumbled away from the trading post in San Antonio, leaving her standing alone in the scorching August heat of 1878. She clutched the crumpled paper in her trembling hands, reading the words again though they were already burned into her memory. "You are no longer our daughter. Your decision to pursue medicine and refuse Mr. Pemberton's proposal has brought shame upon this family. Do not write to us again." Eleanor had known this moment would come eventually, but the reality of it hit harder than any physical blow could have. She was 22 years old, standing in a strange town with nothing but a single trunk of belongings, $43 in her reticule, and a burning determination to become a healer despite what polite Philadelphia society deemed appropriate for a woman. Her mother had wept, her father had raged, and her 3 sisters had looked at her with a mixture of pity and disgust when she had announced her intentions 6 months ago. They had given her one final chance to recant, to accept the marriage proposal from the wealthy banker's son, to be the proper lady they had raised her to be. Instead, Eleanor had boarded a train westward, following the promise of a position assisting an aging doctor in the frontier territories where desperation outweighed prejudice. The sun beat down mercilessly on her dark traveling dress, and sweat trickled down her spine as she surveyed the dusty street before her. San Antonio was a far cry from the manicured squares and brick townhouses of Philadelphia. Here, wooden buildings with false fronts lined rutted roads, horses were tied to every available post, and the air smelled of leather, livestock, and something wild and untamed that both frightened and exhilarated her. She needed to find Dr. Morrison's practice, but the directions she had been given suddenly seemed hopelessly vague. "Ma'am, you look like you could use some shade before you faint dead away in this heat." The voice was deep and warm, tinged with concern, and Eleanor turned to find herself looking up into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar beneath a worn cowboy hat. He could not have been much older than she was, perhaps 25 at most, and despite the dust that covered his boots and the weariness in his stance, there was a gentleness in his expression that made her instinctively trust him. "I am looking for Dr. Morrison's practice," Eleanor said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. "I was told it was near the plaza, but everything looks so different from what I expected." The cowboy's expression shifted, becoming somber. "I am real sorry to tell you this, ma'am, but Dr. Morrison passed away 3 weeks ago. Heart gave out on him suddenly one night. The whole town mourned him. He was a good man who helped a lot of folks." The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow, and she swayed slightly. The cowboy immediately reached out to steady her, his calloused hand gentle on her elbow. "Easy now. When did you last eat something?" "I cannot remember," Eleanor admitted, and it was true. The letter from her family had arrived at her hotel in Houston 2 days ago, and she had been too distraught to do more than pick at her meals since then. Combined with the long, hot journey to San Antonio, and now this devastating news, her body was simply giving up. "Come on," the cowboy said decisively. "There is a decent restaurant just down the street. You need food and water, and then we can figure out what to do next." "I cannot impose on a stranger," Eleanor protested weakly, though her legs were trembling and black spots danced at the edges of her vision. "Name is Cole Brennan, so now we are not strangers anymore," he said with a small smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "And my mama would tan my hide if I left a lady to collapse in the street. Please, let me help you." Something about the earnestness in his voice, the genuine concern in those impossibly blue eyes, made Eleanor nod. Cole picked up her trunk as though it weighed nothing and guided her down the wooden walkway to a small restaurant with checkered curtains in the windows. Inside, it was blessedly cooler, and he settled her at a corner table before ordering her a substantial meal and a pitcher of cool water. As Eleanor drank gratefully, feeling some strength return to her limbs, Cole sat across from her and waited patiently. When the food arrived, roasted chicken, fresh bread, and vegetables, her stomach reminded her forcefully that she was indeed starving, and she ate with more enthusiasm than was probably ladylike. Cole did not seem to mind, and there was approval in his eyes as he watched her regain her color. "So you came all the way from back east to work with Doc Morrison," Cole said after she had eaten enough to look more human. "You are a doctor yourself." "Not yet," Eleanor admitted, setting down her fork. "I have been studying medicine for 2 years with a physician in Philadelphia who believed women should have the opportunity to practice healing arts. But my family, they did not approve. They wanted me to marry a man I did not love, to be a society wife who hosts dinner parties and embroiders cushions. When I refused, they disowned me." She had not meant to share so much, but something about Cole's steady presence made the words tumble out. To her surprise, she saw no judgment in his expression, only understanding and a flicker of anger on her behalf. "That is a hard thing, to lose your family over following your calling," Cole said quietly. "My own pa did not understand why I wanted to stay a ranch hand instead of moving back east with them when they inherited my uncle's business 5 years ago. We parted on bitter terms. I know what it feels like to be alone." The shared pain created an instant connection between them, a recognition of kindred spirits who had chosen their own paths despite the cost. Eleanor felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tight knot of grief she had been carrying. "What will you do now?" Cole asked. "Without Doc Morrison, there is no other physician in San Antonio proper. The nearest one is in a settlement called Cedar Springs, about 30 miles north, but I heard he is thinking of retiring soon too." Eleanor considered her options, which seemed depressingly limited. She had just enough money to survive for perhaps 2 months if she was frugal, but she needed work, and she needed it soon. "I suppose I could try to find another position, perhaps as a teacher or a seamstress, something respectable enough that I can earn my keep." "You do not want to give up on doctoring," Cole observed. "It was not a question." "No," Eleanor said fiercely, surprising herself with her vehemence. "I have sacrificed everything for this. I have studied anatomy from borrowed textbooks, learned how to suture wounds on pig carcasses, memorized every herb and tincture that can heal or harm. I have good hands and a quick mind, and I know I could help people if they would just give me the chance. But what use is knowledge if no one will let me practice it?" Cole was quiet for a long moment, studying her with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. Then he leaned forward, his forearms resting on the table. "The ranch where I work, the Triple B about 10 miles outside town, the owner is a widow named Martha Brennan, my aunt actually. She is getting on in years, nearly 60 now, and she has rheumatism that pains her something terrible. We have about 30 men working the ranch and someone is always getting hurt, kicked by a horse, cut by barbed wire, thrown from the saddle. We have to ride all the way to town every time something serious happens, and twice we have lost good men because we could not get help fast enough." Eleanor's heart began to beat faster as she realized where he was going with this. "What if you came to the Triple B?" Cole continued. "Aunt Martha has a small cottage on the property that has been sitting empty since our last foreman got married and moved to his own place. You could live there, and in exchange for tending to the hands when they need help and helping my aunt with her ailments, you would have room and board and a small wage. It would not be fancy, but you would be practicing your medicine and you would be safe. You would do that for me." Eleanor asked, hardly daring to believe it. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," Cole said simply. "I know you are brave enough to cross half a continent alone to follow your dreams. I know your family was foolish enough to cast you out for wanting to help people. I know you have fire in you that should not be wasted on embroidering cushions." He paused, and something flickered in his eyes, something warm and promising. And I know that someone who has been hurt deserves to find a place where they are wanted." Tears pricked Eleanor's eyes, but these were different from the ones she had shed earlier. These were tears of relief, of hope, of gratitude for this unexpected kindness from a stranger who somehow understood exactly what she needed to hear. "When can we leave?" she asked. Cole's answering smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. "First light tomorrow. I came into town to pick up supplies for the ranch, and I have a few more errands to run. I will get you a room at a decent boarding house for tonight, and we can head out in the morning." True to his word, Cole secured her a clean room at a respectable establishment run by a motherly woman who fussed over Eleanor's pale face and thin frame. He paid for 3 meals and the night's lodging before Eleanor could protest, waving away her stammered thanks with easy grace. "You can pay me back once you are settled and earning your wage," he said. "For now, just rest and get your strength back. Tomorrow is a long ride." That night, lying in an unfamiliar bed in an unfamiliar town, Eleanor found herself thinking not about her family's rejection or doctor, Morrison's death, or even her uncertain future. Instead, she thought about blue eyes and a gentle smile, about calloused hands that had steadied her with surprising tenderness, about a voice that had spoken to her as an equal rather than an oddity. She barely knew Cole Brennan, but he had shown her more kindness in a few hours than her own family had in months. It was a strange and fragile feeling, this hope that maybe, just maybe, things would work out after all. The next morning dawned clear and hot, and Eleanor dressed in her most practical traveling outfit, a simple brown skirt and cream blouse that would show the dust less than her finer things. Cole arrived with a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 strong horses, and he loaded her trunk with ease before helping her up onto the bench seat. As they rolled out of San Antonio in the early light, Eleanor watched the town recede behind them and felt as though she was leaving more than just a place. She was leaving behind the last vestiges of the life she had been expected to lead. The landscape that unfolded around them was unlike anything Eleanor had ever seen. Rolling hills covered in scrub brush and mesquite trees, vast expanses of grass that rippled like water in the breeze, and a sky so big and blue it seemed to swallow the world. Cole pointed out landmarks as they traveled, a distinctive rock formation, a creek where the water ran clear and cold even in summer, the distant shapes of cattle grazing in the early morning cool. "The Triple B has been in my family for 20 years, Cole explained as they jostled along the rough road. "My uncle built it up from nothing, and when he died 10 years ago, Aunt Martha kept it running. She is tougher than most men I know, but she is getting older, and the work is getting harder. My cousin Jacob helps run things, and we have a good crew. They are rough around the edges, most of them, but they are honest workers, and they will treat you respectfully once they understand you are there to help them." "Tell me about the kinds of injuries I should prepare for," Eleanor said, her mind already cataloging the supplies she had brought with her and what else she might need. Cole launched into a detailed account of ranch life and its attendant dangers, and Eleanor listened intently, asking questions and mentally noting which herbs and medicines she should prioritize obtaining. The conversation flowed easily between them, and Eleanor was struck by how comfortable she felt with this man she had only just met. There was no awkwardness, no need to fill silence with empty chatter. Cole treated her opinions with respect, never once suggesting that her medical knowledge was unfeminine or inappropriate. By the time the sun was high overhead, they crested a hill, and Eleanor got her first view of the Triple B ranch spread out in the valley below. The main house was a sprawling structure of weathered wood and stone, surrounded by corrals, barns, and smaller outbuildings. Cattle dotted the pastures in the distance, and she could see several men working near the barns. It was rough and wild and beautiful in a way that made her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "There," Cole said, pointing to a small cottage set slightly apart from the other buildings, shaded by a massive oak tree. "That would be your place. It is not much, but it has a good roof and a solid door, and there is a well nearby with sweet water." As they descended the hill, several of the ranch hands stopped their work to watch the wagon approach with undisguised curiosity. Cole pulled up in front of the main house, and before he could help Eleanor down, the front door opened, and a woman emerged who could only be Martha Brennan. She was tall and sturdy, with iron-gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She moved with a slight limp, favoring her left leg, and Eleanor could see the telltale swelling in her knuckles that spoke of severe rheumatism. But there was strength in her weathered face and kindness in the lines around her eyes. "Cole, you were supposed to bring back supplies, not a young lady," Martha said, but there was amusement in her voice rather than reproach. "I brought both," Cole replied cheerfully, jumping down and then turning to help Eleanor descend. "Aunt Martha, this is Miss Eleanor Hartwell." She came all the way from Philadelphia to work with Doc Morrison, but he passed before she arrived. "Miss Hartwell has been studying medicine, and I thought she might be just what we need here at the ranch." Martha's eyebrows rose, and she looked Eleanor up and down with an assessing gaze that was neither unkind nor immediately welcoming. "A lady doctor, I have heard of such things, though I never thought to see one myself. What makes you think you can handle a bunch of rough cowboys and the kinds of injuries they collect?" Eleanor met her gaze steadily, lifting her chin. "I have studied anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology for 2 years. I can set bones, suture wounds, treat fevers, and compound medicines. I may not have formal credentials, but I have knowledge and I am not squeamish. Give me a chance to prove myself, Mrs. Brennan. I will not disappoint you." A slow smile spread across Martha's face. "You have spine, I will give you that. And Lord knows we need someone with medical knowledge around here. Just last month, one of my best hands nearly bled out from a barbed wire cut because we could not get him to town fast enough." She paused, then nodded decisively. "All right, Miss Hartwell, you can stay in the foreman's cottage. In exchange for doctoring my men and helping with my aches and pains, you will get room, board, and $15 a month. Is that acceptable?" "More than acceptable," Eleanor said, relief flooding through her. "Thank you, Mrs. Brennan. You will not regret this." "See that I do not," Martha said, but her tone was warm. "Cole, help Miss Hartwell get settled, and then I want you to introduce her to the men at supper tonight. They need to know we have a healer on the ranch now." The cottage was indeed small, just 2 rooms. A main living area with a pot-bellied stove and a table, and a tiny bedroom with a simple bed frame. But it was clean, and someone had clearly maintained it well. There were even cheerful gingham curtains at the windows that let in the afternoon light. Cole carried in her trunk and then stood awkwardly in the doorway, his hat in his hands. "I know it is not what you are used to," he began, but Eleanor cut him off. "It is perfect," she said firmly. "It is mine, and I do not have to apologize to anyone for being here or for what I want to do with my life. That is worth more than all the fine houses in Philadelphia." Cole's expression softened, and he took a step closer. "I am glad you see it that way. I was not sure if you would think I was presumptuous, bringing you out here without really knowing what you were getting into." "You saved me," Eleanor said simply. "I was alone in a strange town with no prospects and no future. You gave me both. I will not forget that, Cole Brennan." "Then my family is yours forever," Cole said, the words coming out with an intensity that made Eleanor's breath catch. "You were rejected by the people who should have stood by you, but we will not do that. You are one of us now, Eleanor Hartwell, and we take care of our own." The way he said her name, the fierce protectiveness in his voice, sent warmth flooding through Eleanor's chest. She had known this man for less than a day, but already she felt more seen, more valued than she had in years with her own family. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "Thank you," she whispered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. That evening, Martha rang the dinner bell that called all the ranch hands in from their work. The men filed into the large dining hall attached to the main house, talking and laughing among themselves until they caught sight of Eleanor sitting at the table beside Cole. The room fell silent, dozens of curious and skeptical eyes fixing on her. Martha stood up, rapping her knuckles on the table to get everyone's attention. "Listen up, all of you. This is Miss Eleanor Hartwell, and she is going to be living in the foreman's cottage. She has medical training, and from now on, when any of you idiots get yourselves hurt, you go to her first before you come bothering me about it. She is here to help, and I expect every one of you to treat her with respect. Anyone who does not will answer to me and to Cole. Understood?" There were murmurs of assent, though Eleanor could see doubt on many faces. She understood. She was a young woman, an outsider, and she had not yet proven herself. That would come with time and demonstration of her skills. Supper was a hearty affair of beef stew, cornbread, and dried apple pie. The men were rowdy but not crude, and Eleanor found herself answering dozens of questions about Philadelphia, about her journey west, about what kinds of things she could treat. Cole stayed close to her side throughout the meal, and she noticed that his presence seemed to encourage the other men to be on their best behavior. One of the younger cowboys, a freckled boy of perhaps 19 named Tommy, seemed particularly interested in Eleanor's story. "So your family really just cut you off completely because you wanted to be a doctor?" he asked incredulously. "That seems mighty harsh." "They believed I was bringing shame on them," Eleanor explained, keeping her voice steady though the wound was still raw. "In their world, a woman's purpose is to marry well and raise children, not to pursue education or a profession. I chose differently, and they could not accept that." "Well, their loss is our gain," said an older cowboy named Pete, raising his tin cup in a salute. "We can use someone who knows which end of a bandage goes where." The other men laughed and echoed the sentiment, and Eleanor felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. She was going to be all right here. These were good people, for all their rough edges. After supper, Cole walked Eleanor back to her cottage under a sky scattered with more stars than she had ever seen in her life. The night air was still warm, carrying the scent of grass and horses and something indefinably wild. "They liked you," Cole said as they reached her door. "I could tell. Give them a few weeks and they will be singing your praises." "I hope you are right," Eleanor said. "I want to be useful here to make a real difference." "You will," Cole assured her. His hand came up as though he might touch her cheek, but he stopped himself, letting it fall back to his side. "Get some rest. Tomorrow I will introduce you to the horses, and you can start getting a feel for the ranch." Eleanor watched him walk away into the darkness, his tall figure gradually disappearing into the shadows. She touched her cheek where his hand had almost landed, wondering at the flutter of disappointment she felt that he had not followed through. It was too soon for such thoughts, she told herself firmly. She had only just arrived and her life was still in upheaval. And yet, there was something about Cole Brennan that called to something deep within her, something she had not even known existed until he had smiled at her on that dusty street in San Antonio. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Eleanor set up a small surgery in one corner of her cottage, organizing her medical supplies and creating a clean space where she could treat patients. She spent her mornings learning about the ranch operations, letting Cole teach her how to approach horses, where the cattle liked to graze, and which parts of the property were dangerous during rainy weather. In the afternoons, she treated the various minor ailments that the cowboys presented: splinters, rope burns, a sprained ankle, a nasty cough that threatened to become pneumonia if left untended. Word of her skills spread quickly. Eleanor had a gentle touch and a calm demeanor that put even the most nervous patient at ease, and her remedies actually worked. When she successfully reset a dislocated shoulder for one of the older hands who had been thrown from a horse, the man nearly wept with relief and told everyone who would listen that Miss Eleanor had magic in her fingers. After she compounded a liniment for Martha's rheumatism that actually reduced the swelling and pain, the older woman became her staunchest defender. But it was Cole whose presence seemed to be a constant in Eleanor's new life. He found reasons to check on her throughout the day, bringing her fresh water from the well, making sure she had enough firewood for her stove, inviting her to ride out with him to see different parts of the ranch. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future, their dreams that seemed too big to speak aloud to anyone else. Eleanor learned that Cole had been raised on a small farm in Missouri, that he had come west at 20 after his parents had pressured him to abandon ranch work for a respectable business career back east. He had chosen the freedom of the open range over financial security and family approval, and though he sometimes missed his parents and younger siblings, he had never regretted his decision. He loved the work, loved the land, loved the sense of purpose that came from building something real with his own hands. In turn, Eleanor shared the pain of her family's rejection, the loneliness she had felt in Philadelphia as she pursued her studies in secret, the terror and exhilaration of her journey west. She told him about the first time she had successfully stitched a wound closed, about the medical texts she had memorized by candlelight, about her dream of one day opening a practice where anyone could receive care regardless of their ability to pay. "You are going to do amazing things," Cole told her one evening as they sat on the porch of her cottage, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I have known that since the moment I saw you standing in the street in San Antonio, looking lost but not defeated. You have something special in you, Eleanor." "So do you," Eleanor said softly and meant it. She had watched him work with the horses, had seen his patience with the younger cowboys who were still learning, had observed the way he treated everyone from the lowest ranch hand to his aunt with equal respect and kindness. Cole Brennan was a good man in a way that had nothing to do with wealth or social standing and everything to do with character. Their eyes met, and Eleanor felt the air between them thicken with something unspoken but undeniable. Cole leaned closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek, and this time he did not pull away. "Eleanor," he murmured, her name a question and a promise all at once. "Yes," she breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and searching and somehow exactly right. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as though they were both afraid of breaking something precious. But then Eleanor's hands came up to grip Cole's shoulders, and he deepened the kiss, pulling her closer until she was pressed against the solid warmth of his chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Eleanor felt as though the world had shifted on its axis. "I have been wanting to do that since the day we met," Cole admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "Tell me I am not being a fool, Eleanor. Tell me you feel this too." "You are not a fool," Eleanor said, reaching up to trace his jawline with her fingertips. "I feel it too. I think I started falling for you the moment you offered to help me without asking for anything in return." Cole caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm, his eyes dark with feeling. "I know we have not known each other long, but out here, time moves different. A month on the frontier can teach you more about a person than a year of polite courtship back east. I know what kind of woman you are, Eleanor Hartwell, and I want to be the man who stands beside you while you change the world." Tears spilled down Eleanor's cheeks, but they were happy tears. "My family said I was ruining my life by choosing my own path. But meeting you, being here, doing this work, this is the life I was meant to live, and you are the man I was meant to find." They kissed again, and this time there was nothing tentative about it. This was a kiss of promise, of commitment, of two people who had found each other against all odds and were not about to let go. Over the following months, Eleanor and Cole's relationship deepened and grew. They were careful not to scandalize the ranch by being too obvious about their courtship, but everyone knew. Martha watched them with knowing eyes and approval, and the cowboys started referring to Cole as the luckiest man in Texas. Eleanor had never been happier. Her days were filled with purposeful work that challenged and fulfilled her, and her evenings were spent with a man who made her laugh, made her think, and made her feel cherished in a way she had never experienced before. In October, as the worst of the summer heat finally broke and the air took on a crisp edge, disaster struck. A group of cowboys was moving cattle through a narrow ravine when a rattlesnake spooked the herd. The cattle stampeded, and young Tommy was thrown from his horse directly into their path. By the time the other men got the herd under control and reached him, Tommy was unconscious and badly injured. They brought him to Eleanor's cottage on a makeshift stretcher, and her heart sank when she saw the extent of his injuries. His left leg was broken in at least 2 places, and there was a deep gash on his head that was bleeding profusely. Worse, his breathing was shallow and his color was terrible. "Put him on the table," Eleanor ordered, her voice calm despite the fear coursing through her. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the test of whether she truly had the skill to save a life when it mattered most. Cole was there, pale but steady, helping to position Tommy while Eleanor gathered her supplies with swift, sure movements. She cleaned the head wound first, relieved to find that it looked worse than it was. Scalp wounds always bled heavily, but this one would heal cleanly if she could prevent infection. She stitched it closed with neat, careful sutures while Martha held a lamp close to give her light. The leg was a bigger problem. Eleanor could feel multiple fractures, and she knew that if she did not set them properly, Tommy could end up crippled or worse. She had never set a break this severe before, but she had studied the techniques, had practiced on animal bones, had memorized every step. She could do this. She had to do this. "Cole, I need you to hold him steady," Eleanor said. "Martha, I need you to help me pull the leg straight. This is going to hurt him, even unconscious, so be prepared." For the next hour, Eleanor worked with intense concentration, feeling for the broken edges of bone, pulling them into alignment, splinting the leg securely. Tommy woke once and screamed in agony, but Cole held him down with gentle strength while Eleanor worked. When it was finally done, Eleanor was drenched in sweat and her hands were shaking, but the leg was set as well as any physician could have done it. "Now we wait," she said quietly. "The next few days will tell us if infection sets in or if his body can heal. All we can do is keep him comfortable and watch him carefully." For 3 days and nights, Eleanor barely slept. She stayed by Tommy's side, monitoring his temperature, changing his bandages, forcing water and broth down his throat when he was lucid enough to swallow. Cole brought her meals and sat with her during the long hours, his presence a comfort and a strength. On the 4th day, Tommy's fever broke, and on the 5th day, he opened his eyes and asked for something to eat. The relief that swept through the ranch was palpable. The men gathered outside Eleanor's cottage to peer through the windows and ask after their friend, and when Martha announced that Tommy was going to make a full recovery thanks to Miss Eleanor's skill, there was genuine cheering. "You did it," Cole said that night, pulling Eleanor into his arms as she finally allowed herself to collapse with exhaustion. "You saved his life. If he had been taken to town, he would have died on the journey. You are a true doctor, Eleanor, whether you have a piece of paper saying so or not." Eleanor clung to him, letting the emotions of the past week wash over her. She had been so afraid, so uncertain, but she had trusted her training and her instincts, and it had been enough. This was why she had given up everything for moments like this, for the profound privilege of pulling someone back from the edge of death. "I could not have done it without you," she told Cole. "You believed in me, even when I was terrified I would fail. That belief kept me going." "I will always believe in you," Cole said fiercely, tilting her face up to his. "Always, Eleanor, for as long as I live." In that moment, looking into his eyes, Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with this man. It did not matter that they had only known each other a few months, or that she had no dowry to bring to a marriage, or that her family would never approve. None of that mattered. What mattered was the love she saw reflected in Cole's gaze, the same love that burned bright in her own heart. "Marry me," she said impulsively, the words escaping before she could think better of them. "I know it is supposed to be the man who asks, but I do not care about supposed to. I love you, Cole Brennan, and I want to build a life with you, here on this ranch doing this work. Say yes." Cole stared at her for a long moment, and then his face broke into the most beautiful smile she had ever seen. Yes, he said, and kissed her with a passion that made her toes curl. Yes, 1,000 times yes. I was trying to find the right way to ask you, but I should have known you would beat me to it. You are always one step ahead, Eleanor Hartwell, and I love that about you. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony on the ranch, with Martha serving as witness and all the cowboys dressed in their Sunday best. Eleanor wore a cream-colored dress that Martha had helped her sew, with wildflowers in her hair that Cole had gathered that morning. There was no minister in town, so they spoke their vows to each other under the open sky, with the wind carrying their promises across the land they both loved. I, Eleanor Hartwell, take you, Cole Brennan, to be my husband, Eleanor said, her voice clear and strong. I promise to stand beside you, to support your dreams as you have supported mine, to love you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, for as long as we both shall live. You gave me a family when I had none, and I will spend every day trying to be worthy of that gift. I, Cole Brennan, take you, Eleanor Hartwell, to be my wife, Cole responded, his eyes shining with emotion. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to be your partner in all things. You brought light into my life when I did not even know I was in darkness, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. Then my family is yours forever. I said that the day we met, and I meant it then as I mean it now. There were no rings, but Cole produced a delicate silver locket that had belonged to his mother, and Eleanor fastened it around her neck with trembling fingers. And when they kissed as husband and wife, the cowboys cheered and Martha wiped away happy tears, and Eleanor felt complete in a way she had never imagined possible. They moved Eleanor's belongings into Cole's room in the main house, and that first night as man and wife, wrapped in each other's arms, Eleanor marveled at how far she had come. 6 months ago, she had been a disgraced daughter with no prospects and no hope. Now she was a healer with purpose, a wife with love, and a woman who had found her place in the world. Do you ever regret it? Cole asked softly in the darkness, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. Giving up your family, your old life? Never, Eleanor said without hesitation. They gave me up, not the other way around, and what I found here with you is worth more than all the approval in the world. This is my family now. You, Martha, the ranch, the work, this is where I belong. You belong with me, Cole murmured, kissing her forehead. Always. The years that followed were not without challenges, but they were rich and full and deeply satisfying. Eleanor's reputation as a skilled healer spread beyond the Triple B, and people from neighboring ranches and even the town began seeking her out for treatment. She saved lives, delivered babies, set broken bones, and tended fevers. Cole worked his way up to foreman of the ranch, and together they became a pillar of the small community that was growing around them. 3 years after their marriage, Eleanor gave birth to their first child, a son they named Samuel, with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. Cole was present for the birth, holding Eleanor's hand through the pain and weeping openly when he first held their boy. 2 years later came a daughter, Caroline, tiny and perfect and fierce from the moment she entered the world. Martha lived to see both grandchildren, and she doted on them shamelessly, telling anyone who would listen that her nephew had married the finest woman in Texas, and these babies were proof of it. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 68, it was Eleanor who prepared her body for burial with loving hands, and Cole who carved the headstone that marked her grave on the hill overlooking the ranch she had loved. The Triple B became theirs then, and they poured their hearts into making it thrive. Cole expanded the herds and improved the breeding stock, while Eleanor established a small clinic in one of the outbuildings where people could come for treatment. She trained several of the ranch hands in basic first aid, creating a network of knowledge that saved countless lives over the years. One autumn day, when Samuel was 7 and Caroline was 5, a letter arrived addressed to Eleanor in handwriting she had not seen in nearly a decade. Her hands shook as she opened it, finding a brief note from one of her sisters. Eleanor, I hope this letter finds you. Mama passed away last spring and Papa followed 3 months later. Before he died, he spoke of you often with regret. He never said it outright, but I think he was sorry for how things ended. My husband and I are the only ones still in Philadelphia. Our other sisters have married and moved away. I thought you should know. If you wish to write back, I would like to hear from you. Your sister, Catherine. Eleanor read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and tucked it away. She felt sadness for her parents' deaths, but it was distant, muted by years and distance. The sharp pain of their rejection had long since healed, leaving only a faint scar. That evening, she told Cole about the letter. He listened quietly, then asked, "Will you write back?" Eleanor considered the question carefully. "I think I will," she decided. "Not because I need their approval or forgiveness, I do not, but because Catherine reached out and that took courage. She is still my sister, even after all this time. I can acknowledge that without giving up anything I have built here." "You have such a generous heart," Cole said, pulling her close. "It is one of the many reasons I love you." Eleanor did write back, and over the years she and Catherine maintained a cordial correspondence. Catherine even came to visit once, bringing her own children, and was amazed by the life Eleanor had created. She apologized for not standing up for Eleanor all those years ago, and Eleanor forgave her, because holding on to anger served no purpose. As Samuel and Caroline grew, Eleanor taught them both about healing. Samuel showed a particular aptitude for it, and by the time he was 16, he was assisting his mother with complex cases. Caroline preferred horses and ranching, working alongside her father with fearless enthusiasm. They were both raised to believe that a person's worth was determined by their character and actions, not by their gender or social standing, and they grew into confident, capable adults who made their parents proud. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Cole took Eleanor on a trip back to San Antonio, their first visit since the day they had met. The town had grown substantially, with proper streets and new buildings, but they found the plaza where Eleanor had stood, lost and devastated, reading the letter that had disowned her. "If I could go back and tell that frightened girl what was waiting for her," Eleanor said, leaning against her husband, "I would tell her that losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to her, because it meant she was free to find what really mattered." "Then my family is yours forever," Cole quoted softly, repeating the words he had spoken so long ago. "I meant that then, and I mean it even more now. You are my family, Eleanor Brennan. You and our children and the life we have built together. That is everything." "That is everything," Eleanor agreed, and kissed him there in the plaza where their story had begun. They returned to the Triple B together, to the ranch they had nurtured and the community they had helped build, to the work that gave their lives meaning and the love that made it all worthwhile. Eleanor continued practicing medicine until she was well into her 70s, becoming a legend in the territory as the woman who had defied convention to pursue her calling and had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. When she finally retired, it was to spend more time with her growing family, grandchildren now and eventually great-grandchildren, all of whom heard the story of how Grandma Eleanor had been rejected by her family for wanting to be a doctor, and how Grandpa Cole had said, "Then my family is yours forever," and made it so. Cole and Eleanor grew old together on the ranch they loved, their love deepening with each passing year. They sat together on the porch of the house they had filled with laughter and life, watching the sun set over the land that had given them everything, and they knew they had lived well. When Cole passed away at the age of 82, Eleanor held his hand and whispered her thanks for the gift of their life together. She followed him 2 years later, dying peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by children and grandchildren who wept for her passing even as they celebrated the incredible legacy she had left behind. They were buried side by side on the hill next to Martha, their headstones simple but eloquent. Eleanor Brennan, beloved wife, mother, and healer, and Cole Brennan, beloved husband, father, and friend. But the real memorial to their love was the clinic that their son Samuel established in San Antonio. naming it the Eleanor Brennan Medical Center, and the ranch that their daughter Caroline ran with her own children, keeping the Triple B thriving for another generation. Their story became part of the folklore of the region, the tale of the woman who had been rejected for daring to dream big, and the cowboy who had offered her not just shelter but a forever family. It was a story of courage and kindness, of love found in unexpected places, of the truth that sometimes losing everything opens the door to finding what you were always meant to have. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy of all, not the lives saved or the ranch built or the children raised, but the simple, profound truth that family is not determined by blood or approval or convention. Family is chosen, built, earned through loyalty and love and the everyday choice to stand beside someone and say, "You are mine and I am yours forever." That promise, made on a dusty street in San Antonio in the summer of 1878, had been kept faithfully through every challenge and triumph, every joy and sorrow, every ordinary day and extraordinary moment. And in the keeping of that promise, two people who had been rejected and alone had found a home, a purpose, and a love that transcended time itself. The Wild West had been a hard place, unforgiving and dangerous, but it had also been a place where a woman could forge her own destiny and a man could offer his heart without reservation. Eleanor and Cole had taken the chances that life had given them and transformed them into something beautiful, something lasting, something that echoed through the generations that followed. Their great-granddaughter, studying medicine at a prestigious university a century later, kept a photograph of Eleanor and Cole on her desk, a faded sepia image of a strong-faced woman in practical dress standing beside a tall cowboy, both of them smiling at the camera with eyes that held secrets and promises, and a love that was palpable even across the years. When people asked about the photograph, she told them the story, the true story, passed down through the family, of how her great-great-grandmother had been cast out for daring to want more than society allowed, and how her great-great-grandfather had given her a family and a future when she had neither. "Then my family is yours forever," she would quote, and her voice would carry the echo of that long-ago promise, still resonant, still powerful, still true. And in that telling and retelling, Eleanor and Cole's love lived on, inspiring new generations to be brave, to be kind, to choose love over convention, and to understand that sometimes the family we choose is more real and more precious than the family we are born into. That lesson, learned in the dust and heat of the Texas frontier, remained as vital and necessary in changing times as it had been in 1878. The story of she was rejected by her family for her choices, the cowboy said, "Then my family is yours forever," was more than just a romance. It was a testament to the power of human connection, the importance of following your calling despite the cost, and the truth that love, real love, is about seeing someone for who they truly are and offering them a place to belong, unconditionally and without reservation. Eleanor and Cole had given each other that gift, and in doing so, they had created something that death itself could not diminish, a love story for the ages, a legacy of courage and compassion, and a family built not on obligation but on choice, not on tradition but on respect, not on convenience but on the profound and simple recognition that some souls are meant to find each other, no matter the obstacles in their path. And so the story ends as all the best love stories do, not with an ending at all but with a continuation, a ripple effect of love and courage spreading outward through time, touching lives, changing destinies, and reminding us all that home is not a place but a person, and family is whoever loves you enough to say, "You are mine and I am yours forever."